Princess Lyris sat on the edge of the medical bed while Katie Morrison finished wrapping the bandage around her arm. The wounds were not deep, but they stung with every movement. Lyris did not complain. She had been trained since childhood to endure pain without showing weakness. The medical bay of the Horizon was small and simple compared to the grand healing chambers of Zalara Prime. The walls were plain gray metal, and the equipment looked old and well used. But it was clean, and the human woman treating her had gentle hands and a kind smile. "You're healing quickly," Katie said with a note of surprise in her voice. "Much faster than a human would." "My people are resilient," Lyris replied. "We must be. The galaxy is not a gentle place." Katie nodded and stepped back to admire her work. "Well, you should rest for a few hours. Your body needs time to recover from the trauma." Lyris shook her head. "I cannot rest. Not while those who want me dead are still out there hunting for me." The door to the medical bay slid open, and Commander Jake Collins walked in. He had changed out of his field gear and now wore his standard uniform. His expression was serious, and Lyris could tell immediately that something was wrong. "Princess, we have a problem," Jake said without wasting time on pleasantries. "I just received word from Earth Alliance Command. Intelligence reports indicate that the Shadow Covenant is responsible for the attack on your shuttle." Lyris felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard of the Shadow Covenant. They were a criminal organization that operated across dozens of star systems, taking contracts for assassination, theft, and sabotage. Their operatives were among the deadliest killers in the galaxy. "If the Shadow Covenant is involved, then someone with great wealth and power wants me dead," Lyris said quietly. "They do not accept contracts from ordinary clients." Jake nodded grimly. "There's more. Our sensors have detected 3 vessels approaching our position. They match the profiles of Shadow Covenant attack ships. They'll be within weapons range in about 2 hours. Lyris rose to her feet despite Katie's protests. "Then we must run. Your ship cannot stand against 3 Covenant vessels." "Running isn't an option," Jake said. "They're faster than us, and there's no friendly port within range. If we try to flee, they'll catch us in open space where we have no cover." He walked to a display screen on the wall and pulled up a star map. A cluster of rocky shapes filled one corner of the display. "There's an asteroid field about 40 minutes from here," Jake continued. "If we can reach it before they catch us, we'll have a chance. I have a plan, but it's risky." "What kind of plan?" Jake allowed himself a small smile. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Princess. We've learned a few tricks along the way. When you're outgunned and outmatched, you don't fight fair. You fight smart." For the next 30 minutes, Jake gathered his crew and explained his strategy. They would use the asteroid field as a maze, hiding among the rocks and striking from unexpected angles. It was the kind of warfare that humans called guerrilla tactics, a style of combat that favored speed, stealth, and surprise over raw firepower. The crew listened carefully and asked questions when they needed clarification. Lyris watched from the back of the room, amazed by what she saw. These humans were not panicking or giving up hope. They were preparing to fight against impossible odds with calm determination. Sergeant Ryan Brooks approached the princess after the briefing ended. He was a large man with broad shoulders and scars on his hands from many battles. Despite his intimidating appearance, his eyes were kind. "Commander wants me to stay with you during the fight," Ryan said. "My job is to keep you safe, no matter what happens." Lyris straightened her spine. "I am not helpless. I was trained in combat by the finest warriors on Zalara Prime. I can fight." Ryan studied her for a moment, then nodded with respect. "I believe you, but those assassins on your shuttle were just the first wave. If anyone boards this ship, they'll be coming for you specifically. I need to be there when that happens." The Horizon reached the asteroid field with minutes to spare. Jake guided the ship into the maze of tumbling rocks, finding a hiding spot behind a particularly large asteroid that blocked them from enemy sensors. They waited in tense silence as the three Shadow Covenant vessels entered the field. The enemy ships were sleek and black, designed for speed and killing. They spread out in a search pattern, their weapons hot and ready. Jake watched them on the tactical display, calculating distances and angles in his head. He had studied military history extensively, drawing inspiration from ancient generals who had faced similar situations. Humans had always been creative when their backs were against the wall. "All stations, prepare for attack run Alpha," Jake said quietly into his communicator. "On my mark." The Horizon burst from cover and fired a concentrated volley at the nearest enemy ship. The shot struck the vessel's engine section before it could raise shields, crippling it instantly. Jake immediately pulled the ship back into the asteroids before the other two vessels could return fire. The damaged ship drifted helplessly as the remaining two hunters regrouped. They had not expected such an aggressive move from a small patrol cruiser. They had underestimated their prey. Jake repeated the tactic twice more, striking from different angles each time. He never attacked the same way twice, keeping the enemy guessing and off balance. The second Covenant ship lost its weapons array when Ryan fired a perfect shot from the gunnery station. The third ship took heavy damage to its hull, but remained functional. But the enemy commander was clever. He realized what Jake was doing and adapted his strategy. Instead of chasing the Horizon, he positioned his damaged ship at the center of the asteroid field and waited. "He's trying to draw us out," Jake muttered. "If we attack again, his ship will pin us down while the other one flanks us." Danny Price looked up from his sensor station with alarm on his face. "Commander, I'm picking up a small craft launching from the third ship. It's heading directly toward us at high speed." Jake's jaw tightened. "Someone's trying to get onto our ship." The pod was too small and too fast to shoot down in the cluttered asteroid field. It slammed into the Horizon's hull near the cargo bay, and alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Security teams to the cargo bay," Jake ordered. "Ryan, get the princess somewhere safe." But it was already too late. The intruder had breached the hull and entered the ship. And unlike the assassins on the princess's shuttle, this hunter would not fail. His name was Zarek the Silent, and he had never lost a target in 30 years of killing. Zarek the Silent moved through the corridors of the Horizon like smoke flowing through cracks in a wall. He was tall and thin, with gray skin covered in ritual scars that marked his many kills. His eyes were completely black, seeing in spectrums that other species could not perceive. Cybernetic implants enhanced his muscles, his reflexes, and his senses far beyond their natural limits. He had been killing for the Shadow Covenant since he was a child. They had found him on a dying world, starving and alone, and they had turned him into the perfect weapon. He felt no guilt, no mercy, no hesitation. He simply completed his contracts and collected his payment. The princess was somewhere on this small human ship. He could almost smell her fear. It would not take long to find her and finish what the others had failed to do. Two human crew members rounded a corner ahead of him. They were young and nervous, clutching their weapons with sweaty hands. Zarek killed them both before they could raise their guns. His blade moved so fast that they did not even have time to scream. He stepped over their bodies and continued forward. Ryan Brooks heard the alarm from the security checkpoint go silent. He knew what that meant. The intruder had already killed the guards stationed there. Whoever this assassin was, he was faster and more deadly than anyone Ryan had ever faced. The princess stood behind Ryan in a narrow service corridor. She held the ceremonial blade she had used to kill the assassins on her shuttle. Her silver eyes were calm, despite the danger. "He is coming for me," Lyris said quietly. "I can feel him. He is close." Ryan checked his rifle and made sure it was fully loaded. Then we make our stand here. This corridor is narrow enough that he can't flank us. I'll hold him off while you escape through the maintenance shaft behind you. Lyris shook her head firmly. I will not run while others die for me. That is not the Zalari way. Ryan looked at her with something like admiration. Then stay behind me and watch my back. If I go down, you run. Understood? Before Lyris could answer, a shadow appeared at the end of the corridor. Xerox stepped into the dim light and stopped, studying the two figures blocking his path. The human soldier was large and well-trained, but he was still just a human. The princess was wounded and tired. Neither of them posed a real threat. Step aside, human, Xerox said in a voice like grinding stone. My business is with the princess. If you move now, I will let you live. Ryan raised his rifle and aimed at the assassin's chest. Not going to happen. Xerox sighed with what might have been disappointment. Then you will die first. He moved so fast that Ryan barely saw him coming. The assassin crossed the distance between them in a heartbeat, knocking the rifle aside and striking Ryan in the chest with an open palm. The blow sent Ryan crashing into the wall hard enough to dent the metal. But Ryan did not stay down. He pushed himself back to his feet and drew the combat knife from his belt. His chest ached, and he was sure at least one rib was cracked, but he refused to give up. He was human, and humans did not surrender. The fight that followed was brutal and desperate. Xerox was stronger, faster, and more skilled than Ryan in every way. His cybernetic enhancements made him nearly impossible to hit, and his blows landed with devastating force. Ryan felt his left arm break when Xerox caught it in a grip like iron. He felt his ribs crack further when a kick connected with his side. But he kept fighting. Every time Xerox tried to move past him toward the princess, Ryan threw himself in the way. Every time he fell, he got back up. His blood stained the floor and his vision blurred with pain, but he would not stop. Lyris watched in amazement. She had seen many warriors in her life, some of the finest fighters in the galaxy, but she had never seen anyone fight with such stubborn determination. This human was dying, and he knew it, but he refused to let the assassin pass. Why do you keep fighting? Xerox demanded, genuine confusion in his voice. You cannot win. You are only delaying the inevitable. Ryan spat blood and raised his knife with his one good arm. Because that's what we do. Humans don't quit. We don't give up. Not ever. He lunged forward one more time, and Xerox caught him by the throat. The assassin lifted Ryan off the ground with one hand, preparing to snap his neck and end the fight. Then, Jake Collins arrived. The commander came around the corner with a fire team of 4 soldiers. They opened fire immediately, forcing Xerox to drop Ryan and dive for cover. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, as the humans poured everything they had at the assassin. Xerox retreated down the corridor, dodging shots with inhuman agility. He realized that he had underestimated these creatures. They were weaker than him in every physical way, but they made up for it with courage and teamwork. It was annoying. Jake helped Ryan to his feet, while 2 soldiers kept their weapons trained on Xerox's position. The assassin had taken cover behind a support beam and was assessing his options. Ryan, get the princess out of here, Jake ordered. I'll handle this. Ryan started to protest, but Katie Morrison appeared and began pulling him toward the medical bay. He was too injured to argue. Lyris hesitated before leaving. She looked at Jake with those silver eyes full of emotion. Be careful, Commander. He is not like the others. Jake nodded and turned to face the assassin. He did not have Ryan's strength or the princess's training. He was just an ordinary human with a pistol and a desperate plan. Xerox emerged from cover with a plasma grenade in his hand, his black eyes fixed on Jake with cold calculation. You have interfered with my contract for the last time, human, Zarak said. Now you will all die together. He activated the grenade. In 5 seconds, it would explode and destroy everything within 20 meters. Jake did not hesitate. He did not think about the consequences or the odds of survival. He simply acted on instinct, doing what needed to be done to protect his crew and the princess they had sworn to save. He charged forward and tackled Zarak with all his strength. The assassin was too surprised to react as Jake drove him backward toward the emergency airlock. They hit the release panel together, and the airlock door slammed open, pulling them both into the vacuum of space. The grenade exploded harmlessly in the void, a brief flash of light swallowed by the endless darkness. Jake felt the cold of space biting into his skin as he tumbled away from the ship. His lungs burned and his vision darkened. He thought he was going to die out there among the stars. Then something caught him. The emergency tether attached to his belt had extended automatically. Its magnetic anchor locked on to the hull of the horizon. He jerked to a stop just 30 meters from the ship, hanging in space like a fish on a line. The crew pulled him back aboard moments later. He was unconscious and badly frostbitten, but he was alive. Princess Lyris rushed to his side as Katie and her medical team worked frantically to save him. Tears she did not understand streamed down her blue cheeks as she watched the humans fight to save their commander. She had witnessed something extraordinary today. A man who had thrown himself into the cold death of space to protect a stranger from another world. This was not the behavior of any species she had ever known. These humans were remarkable. Jake Collins woke up 3 days later in the medical bay of the horizon. His body ached from head to toe, and his hands were wrapped in thick bandages to protect the skin damaged by the cold of space. But he was alive, and that was more than he had expected. Katie Morrison stood beside his bed, checking the monitors that tracked his vital signs. She smiled when she saw his eyes open. "Welcome back, Commander," she said warmly. "You gave us quite a scare. Another 30 seconds out there, and we would have lost you." Jake tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest, and he fell back against the pillow with a groan. "Easy," Katie warned. "You have severe frostbite, minor vacuum exposure damage, and 3 cracked ribs. You need rest." "The ship?" Jake asked, his voice rough and dry. "The crew? The princess?" Katie handed him a cup of water and helped him drink. The 2 remaining enemy ships retreated after they saw what happened to their assassin. "We've been limping toward Zellery space ever since." Princess Lyris used her royal codes to request safe passage. Jake closed his eyes and let out a long breath of relief. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. The door to the medical bay slid open, and Princess Lyris entered. She wore clean robes now, provided by the crew from their limited supplies. Her wounds had healed completely, leaving no trace of the attack. Her silver eyes found Jake immediately, and something in her expression softened. "Commander Collins," she said, approaching his bed. "I am pleased to see you awake. I have been waiting to speak with you." Jake tried to push himself up again, feeling it was improper to address royalty while lying down. Lyris gently pressed him back onto the bed. "Please do not strain yourself on my account," she said. "You have done more than enough already." She sat in the chair beside his bed and looked at him with an intensity that made Jake uncomfortable. He was not used to being studied so closely. "I have been trying to understand what you did," Lyris said quietly. "You threw yourself into space with an armed explosive to save your crew and a stranger from another world. You should have died. By all logic, you should have let the assassin kill me and saved yourself." Jake shook his head slowly. "That's not how we do things. My crew trusted me to protect them. You trusted me to keep you safe. I couldn't let either of them down." But why? Lyris pressed. I am not your people. I am not your responsibility. Why would you sacrifice yourself for someone you had just met? Jake thought about the question for a long moment. It was something he had never really put into words before. Because that's what makes us human. We look out for each other. We protect those who can't protect themselves. It doesn't matter if they're family or strangers or aliens from the other side of the galaxy. When someone needs help, we help them. It's just who we are. Lyris stared at him with wonder in her silver eyes. In 200 years of galactic civilization, the Zalari had encountered dozens of intelligent species. None of them had ever shown this kind of selfless courage. Most species looked out for their own interests first, and only helped others when there was something to gain. Your kind is truly remarkable, Commander Collins, Lyris said softly. I will not forget what you have done for me. 5 days later, the horizon reached the border of Zalari space. A fleet of warships was waiting for them, their massive forms blocking out the stars. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, their hulls gleaming with advanced technology that Earth scientists could barely comprehend. Jake stood on the bridge, his hands still bandaged, but his spirit unbroken. He had never seen Zalari warships up close before. They were both beautiful and terrifying, like works of art designed for destruction. A communication signal came through from the lead warship. The face that appeared on the screen was a Zalari male with blue skin, darker than the princess's, and eyes that glowed with authority. He wore ceremonial armor, decorated with jewels and symbols of rank. Human vessel, the officer said, his voice deep and commanding. I am Admiral Theron Voss of the Royal Guard. You are carrying Princess Lyris Veneth aboard your ship. Jake stepped forward and nodded respectfully. That's correct, Admiral. I'm Commander Jake Collins of the Earth Alliance. The Princess's shuttle was attacked by assassins, and we rescued her. We're here to bring her home safely. The Admiral studied Jake through the screen for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. You will follow us to Zalara Prime, the Admiral finally said. King Aldrin wishes to meet the humans who saved his daughter. You will be treated as honored guests. The journey to the throne world took 2 more days. The horizon traveled at the center of the Zalari fleet, escorted by ships that could destroy it with a single shot. Jake noticed that the alien crews watched his vessel with curiosity through their viewports. Humans were still new to the galactic community, and most species had never seen one in person. Zalara Prime was a breathtaking world. Its surface was covered in crystal forests that sparkled in the light of 3 suns. Cities of white stone and silver metal rose toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float on air. It was the most beautiful planet Jake had ever seen. The horizon landed in a courtyard outside the Crystal Palace, the seat of Zalari power for over 10,000 years. Jake and his senior officers changed into their best dress uniforms and prepared to meet the king. Ryan Brooks walked with a slight limp from his injuries, but he insisted on joining the delegation. Katie Morrison carried a medical bag, just in case. Danny Price adjusted his collar nervously, overwhelmed by the grandeur surrounding them. Princess Lyris met them at the entrance to the palace. She was dressed in formal robes of white and gold, her hair arranged in an elaborate style that marked her status as royalty. She looked like a completely different person from the wounded survivor Jake had found in that damaged shuttle. Thank you for coming, Lyris said, with genuine warmth. My father is eager to meet you. Please, follow me. She led them through corridors of polished crystal and rooms filled with treasures from 1,000 conquered worlds. Zalari nobles watched the humans pass, with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Most had never been this close to the strange new species that had recently appeared on the galactic stage. The throne room was enormous, its ceiling so high that it disappeared into shadow. King Aldrin Veneth sat on a throne of pure white crystal, his presence commanding the attention of everyone present. He was old by Zalari standards, over 500 years, but his eyes were sharp and his bearing was proud. Jake approached the throne and bowed respectfully. His crew followed his lead. The king rose from his throne and descended the steps toward the human delegation. The room fell completely silent. No one approached visitors in the throne room. It was unheard of. King Aldrin stopped in front of Jake and studied him with ancient eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "Commander Jake Collins," the king said in perfect English, "I have heard what you did for my daughter. You fought against impossible odds. You threw yourself into the void of space to defeat an assassin. You nearly died to save a princess from a people you barely know." Jake met the king's gaze steadily. "I did what anyone would have done, Your Majesty." The king shook his head slowly. "No, Commander. That is where you are wrong. No one else would have done what you did. I have ruled this empire for 300 years. I have met countless species and witnessed countless acts of courage and cowardice. What you did was extraordinary." He placed a hand on Jake's shoulder, a gesture of deep respect in Zalari culture. "You have saved the most precious thing in my life," King Aldrin continued. "My daughter is all I have left of her mother, who passed many years ago. I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Jake did not know what to say. He had never expected to stand before one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, receiving praise for simply doing his duty. The king smiled, and there was warmth in his ancient eyes. "But I intend to try." The throne room of the Crystal Palace fell into stunned silence as King Aldrin Veneth made his announcement. Every noble, every guard, every servant present held their breath and stared at their ruler with disbelief. "I wish to offer my daughter's hand in marriage to Commander Jake Collins of Earth," the king declared, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Through this union, the Zalari Empire and the human race shall be bound together in eternal alliance." Jake felt his heart stop. He glanced at Princess Lyris and saw that she was equally shocked by her father's words. Her silver eyes were wide, and her mouth had fallen slightly open. The nobles in the throne room began whispering among themselves. Some looked outraged at the suggestion that their princess would be given to an alien from a primitive world. Others seemed intrigued by the political implications. A few simply stared at the humans with undisguised contempt. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward. He knew that his next words could shape the future of relations between humans and Zalari for generations to come. He had to choose them carefully. "Your Majesty," Jake began, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. "I am deeply honored by your offer. It is a gift beyond anything I could have imagined, but I must respectfully decline." Gasps echoed through the throne room. No one had ever refused a royal offer before. It was unheard of, perhaps even treasonous, in Zalari culture. King Aldrin's expression did not change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "You refuse? Do you not understand what I am offering you, Commander? My daughter is the most sought-after woman in the Empire. Princes and lords from 100 worlds have begged for her hand. And you say no?" Jake nodded slowly. "I understand the honor completely, Your Majesty. But in human culture, marriage is not something that can be given as payment or reward. It is a choice made freely by two people who care for each other. I cannot accept your daughter as a prize for my actions, no matter how generous the gesture." He paused and looked at Lyris, meeting her silver eyes directly. "Princess Lyris is a brave and remarkable woman," Jake continued. "She deserves to be with someone who loves her for who she is, not someone who received her as a gift. To accept your offer would dishonor her and everything she represents." The throne room was absolutely silent. King Aldrin stared at Jake with an expression that was impossible to read. Seconds stretched into eternity as everyone waited for the king's response. Then Princess Lyris stepped forward and stood beside Jake. "Father," she said, her voice clear and strong, "the commander is right. I will not be given away like property, even to a man who saved my life. That is not the kind of queen I wish to become." King Aldrin's stern expression cracked, and something that might have been pride appeared in his ancient eyes. He looked between Jake and his daughter with growing understanding. "You speak of marriage as a choice," the king said slowly, "a bond formed through love rather than duty or politics. This is a strange concept to us. In Zalari tradition, royal marriages have always been arranged for the benefit of the empire." Lyris lifted her chin defiantly. "Perhaps it is time for our traditions to change. The humans have shown us that there are other ways of thinking, other ways of living. Maybe we can learn from them." The king was silent for a long moment. The nobles watched anxiously, wondering if their princess had pushed too far. Challenging the king's decisions was dangerous, even for his own daughter. Then King Aldrin did something no one expected. He laughed. It was a deep, genuine laugh that echoed through the throne room and shocked everyone present. The king had not laughed like that in many years, not since his beloved queen had passed away. "My daughter speaks with the spirit of her mother," King Aldrin said when his laughter subsided. "She was always challenging me, always pushing me to be better. I see now that the princess has inherited that fire." He turned to Jake with new respect in his eyes. "Commander Collins, you have impressed me twice today. First by saving my daughter, and second by refusing a gift that would have made any other man in the galaxy fall to his knees in gratitude. You have integrity. It is a rare quality among the stars." Jake bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The king raised his hand, and the throne room fell silent once more. "Since marriage is not acceptable, I will offer something else instead. Let there be an alliance between the Zalari Empire and the people of Earth. Not a bond of obligation, but a friendship built on mutual respect and shared values." He gestured toward his daughter. "Lyris has expressed a desire to learn more about your people. I hereby appoint her as ambassador to Earth, where she will represent the Zalari Empire and strengthen the ties between our civilizations." Lyris turned to her father, with surprise and joy on her face. "Father, do you mean it?" "I do," King Aldrin replied with a warm smile. "You have always wanted to explore the galaxy and meet new peoples. Now you will have your chance. And perhaps, in time, you will find someone worthy of your heart, whether they are Zalari or human or something else entirely." Lyris embraced her father, abandoning royal protocol in her excitement. The nobles whispered among themselves, but this time their expressions were thoughtful rather than hostile. Change was coming to the Zalari Empire, and it had arrived in the form of a small human ship and a commander who refused to accept a princess as a prize. Jake watched the scene with a sense of profound relief. The mission had started as a simple patrol, and had turned into something that would change the course of galactic history. He had not expected any of this when he woke up 3 days ago in that medical bed. Ryan Brooks limped over and stood beside his commander. "So, we're allies with the most powerful empire in the galaxy now. Not bad for a week's work." Jake smiled. "Not bad at all." Katie Morrison joined them, her eyes bright with excitement. "And we're getting an alien ambassador. The scientists back on Earth are going to lose their minds." Danny Price was staring around the throne room in wonder, trying to memorize every detail so he could tell his family back home. The celebration that followed lasted for 3 days. The humans were treated as honored guests, given the finest rooms in the palace, and invited to feasts that showcased the best of Zalari culture. Jake met nobles, scholars, and warriors who wanted to learn about the strange new species that had captured their princess's gratitude and their king's respect. On the final night, Jake stood alone on a balcony overlooking the crystal forests of Zalara Prime. The 3 suns had set, and the sky was filled with stars, more numerous than he had ever seen. Lyris joined him quietly, standing beside him at the railing. "You will be leaving tomorrow," she said, "returning to your world." Jake nodded. "My crew needs to get home. We've been away too long." "I will follow soon," Lyris replied. "There are preparations to be made before I can assume my duties as ambassador. But I wanted to thank you again, Commander, not just for saving my life, but for showing me that there is more to the galaxy than politics and power." Jake turned to look at her. In the starlight, her blue skin seemed to glow with inner light, and her silver eyes held depths he was only beginning to understand. "You're going to be a great ambassador," he said. "Earth is lucky to have you." Lyris smiled, and there was warmth in it that had not been there before. "Perhaps our paths will cross again, Commander Collins. The galaxy is large, but it has a way of bringing interesting people together." "I'd like that," Jake admitted. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars spin slowly overhead. Neither knew what the future would bring, but both understood that something had begun here. A friendship, an alliance, and perhaps something more, waiting to be discovered. The Horizon departed Zalara Prime the next morning, escorted once again by the Royal Fleet. Jake watched the beautiful world shrink in the viewport until it was just another point of light among millions. Ryan raised a glass in the mess hall that evening. "To the craziest mission we've ever survived." Katie laughed and raised her own glass. "To Commander Collins, who jumped into space to fight an assassin and somehow lived to tell about it." Danny grinned and added, "To humanity. May we keep making friends in high places." Jake smiled and drank with his crew. They had faced death together and emerged stronger for it. They had earned the respect of an empire and opened doors that would benefit their entire species. But more than that, they had proven something important. Humans were small and new to the galactic community. They lacked the technology, the numbers, and the history of the great empires. But they had something else, something that could not be measured or replicated. They had heart. And in the end, that made all the difference. The Horizon sailed on toward Earth, carrying its crew home to a world that would soon learn just how big and wonderful and dangerous the universe truly was. The adventure was only beginning. The stars stretched endlessly across the viewport of the patrol vessel Horizon as it moved through the quiet darkness of space. Commander Jake Collins stood on the bridge with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the distant lights of the Varelian star system. It was supposed to be a simple mission: patrol the outer rim, check for pirates, and return home. Nothing exciting ever happened on these runs. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many years of space travel. He had joined the Earth Alliance Navy at 18 and worked his way up through the ranks over 15 long years. Now at 33, he commanded his own vessel and a crew of 42 souls who depended on him to keep them safe. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Lieutenant Katie Morrison sat at the medical station, reviewing crew health reports on her tablet. She was a kind woman with red hair and freckles who had patched up more injuries than she could count. Sergeant Ryan Brooks stood near the weapons console, his muscular frame relaxed but ready. He was the best fighter on the ship, and everyone knew it. A sharp beep broke the silence. The sensor officer, a young man named Danny Price, looked up from his screen with confusion on his face. "Commander, I'm picking up an energy signature about 200 kilometers off our port side," Danny said. "It looks like a small shuttle, but something is wrong with it." Jake walked over to the sensor station and looked at the readings. The shuttle was drifting without power, its engines dark and its life support barely functioning. There were faint heat signatures inside, which meant someone might still be alive. "Can you identify the vessel?" Jake asked. Danny typed quickly on his console. "A royal transport shuttle based on the design." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Zalari Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, and their military could crush Earth's entire fleet without breaking a sweat. Humanity had only made first contact with them 2 years ago, and the diplomatic relationship was still fragile. "Take us in slowly," Jake ordered, "and somebody get me a visual." The main screen flickered and showed the damaged shuttle floating in space. Jake drew in a sharp breath when he saw it. The hull was covered in blast marks and scorch patterns. Someone had attacked this vessel with heavy weapons. Parts of the outer shell were torn open, exposing the framework beneath. It was a miracle anyone inside was still alive. "Sir, I'm reading 3 heat signatures," Danny reported. 2 are fading fast. 1 is still strong. "Bring the shuttle into our cargo bay. Katie, get your medical team ready. Ryan, I want armed guards standing by just in case." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the damaged shuttle was secured inside the Horizon's cargo bay. Jake led a small team to investigate, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. He did not know what he would find inside, but he had to be ready for anything. The shuttle's hatch was jammed, so Ryan had to force it open with a heavy pry bar. The metal groaned and gave way, revealing a dark interior filled with smoke and the smell of burned circuits. Jake activated the light on his helmet and stepped inside. The first thing he saw was a body. A Zalari warrior lay on the floor with his chest torn open by some kind of blade weapon. His armor was scorched and his eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. A few steps further, Jake found a second body in similar condition. These were trained soldiers, elite guards based on their equipment, and someone had killed them both in close combat. Near the back of the shuttle, Jake heard a faint sound. He raised his pistol and moved forward carefully. Behind a stack of storage containers, he found a young Zalari female pressed against the wall with a curved blade in her hands. She was ready to fight, despite the wounds that covered her arms and the exhaustion in her eyes. Jake had never seen a Zalari up close before. Her skin was a soft blue color that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her eyes were silver and bright like polished metal. Her hair was long and white, falling around her shoulders in tangled waves. She was beautiful in a strange and otherworldly way. "Easy," Jake said softly, lowering his weapon. "We're not here to hurt you. We're from the Earth Alliance. We saw your ship was damaged and came to help." The female studied him with those silver eyes. She did not lower her blade. "You are human," she said. Her voice was musical, but strained with pain. "I have heard stories about your kind." "Good stories, I hope," Jake replied with a small smile. "I'm Commander Jake Collins. What happened here? Who did this to you?" The female hesitated for a long moment before finally lowering her weapon. The strength seemed to drain from her body, and she slumped against the wall. "Assassins," she whispered. "They killed my guards. I thought they would kill me too, but I fought back. I killed them, but the ship was already damaged. I have been drifting for hours." Jake holstered his pistol and knelt beside her. "Katie, get in here now. We have a survivor who needs medical attention." Katie rushed in with her medical kit and began examining the wounded female. Jake watched as his medical officer worked with gentle hands, cleaning wounds and applying bandages. The Zalari female watched the human woman with something like wonder in her eyes. "You are helping me," the female said quietly. "Why? You do not even know who I am." Jake shrugged. "Because you needed help. That's reason enough." The female smiled weakly. "My name is Lyris Veneth. I am the daughter of King Aldrin Veneth, ruler of the Zalari Empire." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. He had just rescued a princess. Not just any princess, but the only child of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The political implications were staggering. "Well, Princess Lyris," Jake said after a long pause, "you're safe now. No one is going to hurt you while you're on my ship." Lyris looked at him with those silver eyes, and for the first time since the attack, she felt something she had not expected to feel. These strange humans from a distant blue world had found her in the darkness of space and offered her kindness without asking for anything in return. She did not understand it, but she was grateful for it. Katie helped the princess to her feet and guided her toward the medical bay. Jake stayed behind for a moment, looking at the bodies of the dead assassins. Someone powerful had sent these killers after the princess. Someone who would not be happy to learn she had survived. Jake knew that trouble was coming. He could feel it in his bones. But he was human, and humans did not run from trouble. They faced it head-on and fought with everything they had. He walked out of the shuttle and began preparing his crew for whatever came next.